Hi there, I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I offer this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, and for the soul. And it's titled Moby Dick, to resent or rejoice. I have just returned from summer school held in Great Hucklow in the Derbyshire Hills, beautiful place, and this year marked summer school's 30th anniversary. And this year we were going by the title of Finding My Religion, being Unitarian in the 21st century. Over 50 of us gathered in person for theme talks, engagement groups, and all kinds of other activities, some out in the beautiful countryside, some more personal and internal, some joyful and some playful and some challenging too, and lots of singing. Lots of singing. There were many others that joined some of the activities online too. It was a wonderful thing to be a part of, as it has been ever since I first attended over 15 years ago. I'm pretty regular nowadays. It was a working week, but it was also a week to experience and to spend time in glorious company, wonderful human beings, and to be fed too. Molly was particularly pleased as she got a sausage for breakfast every morning, as well as all the wonderful company. Beautiful place. I was very involved this year, as it seems I am in so many areas of my wider Unitarian life, I guess. I co-led an engagement group and I co-presented a theme talk with Arik Malecki, who is a wonderfully gifted minister serving the Leicester Unitarians. Our engagement group was titled The Words We Speak Become the House That We Live in, which are words attributed to the Sufi mystic Hafiz. And actually, we built a house, which I'll show you perhaps next time. And I'll speak more about it probably in these videos that will follow maybe in the next couple of weeks. I'll probably explore a couple of the themes. Our theme talk was well received as we explored our journeys in our own unique and complementary styles. We gained a nickname, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, from one of our group. He said all we needed was caps to wear. Although to say that about me and Eric's a bit rude to him, as he's 20 years younger than I am. But interestingly, when Eric was studying at Luther King House, one of the tutors there often called Eric Danny. He'd been a tutor when I was training there, so there obviously is some kind of resemblance, but I still think it's a bit rude to poor Eric. I also had a ballad written about me, written in my honour by Nick Morris, who was the musician for the week and also came up with the nickname Tweedledum and Tweedledee. The ballad was beautiful, if a little bit embarrassing to hear, but very moving, and the point of it was touched. Oh, and on top of everything else, I returned with a wonderful gift. Here it is, I'll show you it. Can you see what it is? Can you see what it is? It's a giant knitted whale. And this was created by Ruby, a younger member of our congregation. And I became a little bit obsessed in my hunt for this whale and paid more than I intended to in the silent auction. But it was for a good cause, to the bursary, so that some people can afford to go who perhaps are on low income. So it was all for a good thing. And I got what I came for, what I was looking for. Now, birthdays and anniversaries have been on my mind. I recently attended the golden wedding anniversary of Bill and Morag Darlison. Bill is one of my ministerial heroes. and I have loved being in their company many, many times over the years. But I was travelling there on the day with a sense of sadness, as I had a feeling it might be the last time I would be seeing Bill. When I arrived, he greeted me warmly, told me how pleased he was to see me, as he had a request. He told me it was all arranged, and would I be able to conduct his funeral when his time came. All arranged, and he would give me some space to make it my own. I of course agreed, how could I not? And he told me he would email the details. We then shared in a wonderful lunch with a speech given by Bill that was both moving and hilarious, but moving too. There was not one hint of self-pity, just deep gratitude and deep love for his beautiful wife, Morag. As he said, she is still the most beautiful woman in Pontefract, before adding that a friend of his said, "No, Bill, she's the most beautiful woman in England." Now, Morag is a native of Scotland, but moved to nurse in Pontefract over 50 years ago. And she stayed for obvious reasons. Now, Bill had been given a terminal cancer diagnosis over 20 years ago, but he recovered. The cancer, though, has recently returned. And he's been through some intensive treatment, which ended a few weeks ago, and he looks really well, actually. There is no sign of cancer, he says. But when the time does come, if I'm still around myself, who knows? I will, of course, do as he requested. But I don't think it will be in the immediate future, and I think it will involve two other ministers from the Dublin church, or connected to the Dublin church, where he was minister, two of his protégés, really. We shall see. I'm just happy to do whatever Bill and Morag need me to do when the time comes. Although, if Bill is classic Bill, I may have been retired myself by then, or something else could have happened to me. He seems to have a resilience, although he is cared for by the wonderful Morag. No one could be better cared for. It was a great day, but it was a little bit tarnished by something that happened on my way on the M62. I witnessed something both dangerous and disturbing on the motorway. It didn't ruin the day, but it really stayed with me. A large 4x4 entered the motorway in a rather erratic fashion and almost collided with a motorcyclist who had to take evasive action to avoid the vehicle. The motorcyclist was obviously not very happy about this, and he pulled up next to the 4x4 and kind of began gesturing. I'm not going to show you the gestures at the driver, and saying some words. The guy wound down his window, and there was a back and forth that went on, and more gestures from both men, and what ensued was rage, classic road rage, dangerous road rage, as they kept pulling out and coming to the side. One would overtake, pull out, and then speed off, and then the other one would come to the side of the other one, and they would hurl abuse at each other, and really driving very dangerously. And who knows, they could have easily caused an accident to many around them. I pulled back, but I'm going to stay out of this one and let them pull away, because I didn't want to get involved in what the aftermath that might come from their rather dangerous altercation. And then my homiletic consciousness kicked in, because it brought images along with the whale of Captain Ahab, of course, and of course Moby Dick. It brought to my mind the power of anger and resentment. It awakened my homiletic consciousness, hence what I'm talking about in this video devotion. Summer school was very special this year. I have shared in beautiful, if somewhat eccentric company, and heard the most wonderful of words in recent days and weeks. And this is in complete and utter contrast to some of the things I have witnessed and heard in the wider world around me, things that break my heart, things that disturb me greatly, chill me to the bone sometimes. And I'm reminded of those words by Hafiz. The words we speak become the house we live in. I wish to build a house of love, not a house of resentment or a house of hatred, for I know that resentment is so destructive. But what is resentment? Well, resentment is a negative emotion that is refelt and replayed over and over again until at times it becomes all-consuming. It's refeeling negative emotion. It didn't originally necessarily mean refeeling negative feelings, but that's what it means today. It literally means to resense, to refeel. But resentment today only has negative connotations, and some of the most negative and destructive. And at its most destructive, it becomes an all-consuming, repetitive rage. Friedrich Nietzsche said of resentment, "Nothing on earth consumes a man more completely than the passion of resentment." When I look back at my life, there have been examples, some serious and others just plain ridiculous, that have consumed me for periods of time. And I know I'm not unique in this. It happens to us all. Things from our past can so easily control and even poison the life we are attempting to live today. I know from truly looking at my own life and honestly acknowledging all that has happened to me and all that I have caused to happen, that many of these resentments that I used to carry were really just justifications for the mess I was in at the time. By blaming others for my troubles, the things that they had done, real or imagined, I would somehow raise myself above them and place myself on some pedestal looking down. But the problem, of course, was that I just remained lost in a sea of anger, and my life went nowhere other than becoming increasingly lost in that sea. I was stuck on a ship created from my own ill feeling, heading for trouble and unable to change direction. The bitter feelings were all so all-consuming that I could not hear the voices that were offering different directions, and my senses were closed to the joy present in this life and the joy all around me. It was such a waste. Yes, resentment is a waste of life, and it quickly becomes all-consuming. It can take over your whole life. And you'll find examples of people caught up in resentments in the canon of great literature. I think the classic being Captain Ahab in Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Ahab is consumed by his rage against the white whale, Moby Dick, who in a previous voyage had destroyed his ship and bitten off his leg. So Ahab, vowing revenge, sets out on a voyage to hunt down the white whale. He becomes so consumed by his rage and his need for revenge that as time goes by, he no longer sees Moby Dick merely as a perpetrator of an evil act, but as the devil incarnate, as the sum and substance of all evil that occurs in our lives. And this is almost nearly perfectly illustrated in this following passage I will share from the novel Moby Dick. Small reason was there to doubt then that ever since the almost fatal encounter, Ahab had cherished a wild vindictiveness against the whale, of all the more fell for that in his frantic morbidness he at least came to identify him, not only all his bodily woes, but all his intellectual and spiritual exasperations. The white whale swam before him as the monomaniac incarnation of all those malicious agencies with some deep men feel eating in them, till they are left living on with half a heart and half a lung. That intangible malignity that has been from the beginning, to whose dominion even the modern Christians ascribe one half of the world, with the ancient fights of the East reverenced in their statue devil. Ahab did not fall down and worship it like them, but deliriously transferring its idea to the abhorred white whale, he pitted himself all mutilated against it, all truth with malice in it, all that cracks the sinews and cakes the brain, all the subtle demonism of life and thought, all evil to crazy Ahab, were visibly personified and made practically assailable in Moby Dick. He piled upon the whale's white hump the sum of all the general rage and hate felt by his whole race from Adam down. And then, as if his chest had been a mortar, he burst his hot heart's shell upon it. They don't write books like that anymore, do they? What language, what powerful, destructive, hate-filled language. And here Ahab, towards the end, he grapples with the white whale right to the very end. He hurls his final harpoon and cries out, "To the last I grapple with thee, from hell's heart I stab thee, for hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee." Now I know this is only a work of fiction, a great work of fiction, by the way, and one written by a man actually with Unitarian links, for Herman Melville worshipped at All Souls Unitarian Church in New York, that place where Forest Church served for so many years with distinction. It's only a work of fiction, but there is something in this work of fiction that speaks to me, and I believe can speak to all of us, when we look at the power of rage, at the destructive nature of deep-rooted resentment. And it's not something that's from a fictional work. Look at the world around us in so many places, and you see examples of this. It's not all life, by the way, because all life isn't like that, but there are powerful examples of people against people, consumed by rage and bitter resentment, and destroying as the result of that their own white whales, whatever that might be. Have you ever been consumed by rage? And the problem, of course, is that once you become consumed by such intensely powerful emotions, it's difficult, if not possible, to change direction. And this is especially true if you believe that the resentment you feel is justified, often the most destructive of them all. Now, while the anger may be justified, I am certain that the destruction it carries with it is not. Like the motorcyclist reaction on the M62 and the 4x4 driver's response to that. This could so easily have led to a serious accident and loss of life, all because of the rage of two men who believed their responses were justified. Thankfully, as far as I know, nothing happened. Resentment can close down all of our senses to such an extent that we fail to heed all the warning signs around us and end up crashed against the rocks once more, all alone. Or we may end up with Ahab's fate. We can so easily find ourselves shipwrecked or lost at sea, desperate to find dry land again. An Ahab story brings to mind another story I was told once, a story of an old sea captain. And it was at a time before modern communication. One night, the ship saw a beacon of another ship headed straight for them. A lookout saw the beacon of another ship headed straight for them. So the captain asked his signalman to warn them, and so he blinked to the other ship. Change your course 10 degrees south. Moments later, the reply blinked, change your course 10 degrees north. To which the captain of the ship ordered the signalman to answer, I am captain, change your course south. To which the reply came back, I am seaman first class, change your course north. Which infuriated the captain. So he ordered the signalman to reply, I am a battleship, change your course south. To which instantly came another response. I am a lighthouse, change your course north. One could change their course, the other could not, no matter how much they threatened with violence, with their power, that they had to change course. That was in their power. If only we could just listen and perhaps change course for the good of not only our own health, but those that we share our lives with and those that are in contact with our lives. Innocence. But it's not so easy, especially when we believe we are right and we get this sense of superiority by this feeling of being right, even if we're not right, actually. If only we could see the damage that this does to ourselves and all those who come into contact with us. But alas, when a person is so consumed by rage like Ahab, it's hard, if not impossible, to see. Even if you're a battleship headed straight towards a lighthouse. Resentment is such a destructive force, maybe the most. So what's the alternative? Well, it begins, as I keep saying, with the words we speak, with the way we act towards others and the way that we see others. For this will create the house, the world that we live in. It begins with seeing the good in others, to see ourselves in others, to not see them as something different to us, as enemy, to make them something that we're not, to separate. And maybe it begins by seeing what is beautiful and joyful in our lives and the lives of other people, to see the whole picture, not just the resentment which consumes us. It is so easy to get stuck in what is wrong and therefore fail to see what is good and to rejoice in what is good. It's such a terrible state of mind to get into. As the poet Milton has said, the mind is its own place and in itself can make a hell of heaven and a heaven of hell. It's all about perception. So perhaps the key is to change course and not to sail into the rocks or to be sunk to the depths by the white whale. The key, I suspect, is to change our minds. The key is to rejoice rather than to resent. And how does this begin, you may well ask? Well, I believe that it begins by learning ways to celebrate our lives. It begins by learning to savour every breath, no matter what is dealt to us. It begins by learning to offer that unceasing prayer, thank you. Something I witnessed so powerfully and beautifully and movingly at Bill and Morag's golden wedding anniversary. Just so beautiful. It begins by following the advice of the Hopi elders who suggested that you should gather yourself, see who is in the water with you, and celebrate. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. What we did at Bill and Morag's golden wedding anniversary, such a celebration of two beautiful people. And maybe that's how we begin to rejoice, by looking at those in the water with us and learning to rejoice in who they are. Pema Chodron claims that rejoicing in the good fortune of others is a practice that can help us when we feel emotionally shut down and unable to connect with others. Rejoicing generates goodwill. The next time you go out in the world, you might try this practice, directing your attention to people in their cars, on the sidewalk, talking on their cell phones. Just wish for them all to be happy and well. Wish for them all to be happy and well. Wish for them all to be happy and well. It's a good way to start a day, you know. And maybe this is a way to set ourselves free from the anger and resentful feelings that leave us all lost in the sea of life, shipwrecked. Maybe this is one way to help us change direction and not to leave us shipwrecked against the rocks. Maybe this is one way to begin to rejoice in life. Maybe it can begin by not so much looking for the things to be grateful for in our lives, but instead to offer gratitude for the good fortune of others who we find ourselves in the water with. Maybe it begins by wishing good fortune to the people that we meet, recognizing their sacredness, expressing true gratitude as Bill did in his speech, despite the real troubles. And I found this really does begin to work, you know, as it begins to fill us with joy, because when our minds are thinking of others' good fortune, it is difficult for us to be thinking of anything else. So you can't just let go of these feelings. You have to fill your heart and your mind and your soul with something else. Why not give it a go? You never know. You might just find that if you do, your minds might just become freed from the shackles of resentments. And then you might be able to learn to live and rejoice in the beautiful gift that's this day, this journey, this day. For the words that we speak become the house that we live in. And I wish to build a house of love, not a house of resentment and hate. The choice is ours. Which way are you going to turn today? Do you resent or do you rejoice? Amen. So I'm going to end this reflection with just a few words of blessing. You know, we need to bless more, and we can all bless. We bless by giving ourselves, our whole selves, wholeheartedly, our whole hearts to life. So let's give our whole hearts to life. Let's once more return to our lives. Let us live open-heartedly, so that the Spirit that lives to set us free can enter into us, can live through us, can fill our hearts so that we may become beacons of love and connection to all that we meet in this world. May we carry that Spirit with us, and may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, and in all that we do. Go in peace. Amen.